Ho, ho, ho! Is this thing on? Mic check. One sleigh, two sleigh. That's right. I've got a podcast now. Stories, jokes, and some serious North Pole nonsense. Santa Has a Podcast is out now at santahasapodcast.com. Ho, ho, ho!
Support American jobs while standing up for your values. OldGloryDepot.com brings you conservative pride on premium, made-in-USA gear. Don't settle. Wear your patriotism proudly. Visit OldGloryDepot.com today.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Welcome to another episode of Breaking Battlegrounds, a very special Thanksgiving episode for everybody today, and we hope you are going to be having a wonderful Thanksgiving or have already had a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family. Our first guest today, Bill Federer, nationally known speaker, best-selling author, and president of AmeriSearch, a publishing company dedicated to researching and preserving America's noble heritage, but you likely know him from his daily American Minute radio feature heard across the country, or from his television program Faith in History, which airs nationwide on TCT Network and on DirecTV. Bill Federer, welcome to the program.
Hey, it's great to be with you.
Bill, what do Americans not understand about the history of Thanksgiving? What is their misperception of it?
Yeah, well, one of the first things is they came over for religious freedom. So in England, they were canceling people for saying something different than what the government wanted them to say.
So basically like today, like their social media clamped down today.
As I was listening, I watched several of his things on YouTube last night.
Right.
And I will tell you, the parallels to today, to what drove that movement, are astounding.
Go ahead. Sorry, Bill.
Yeah, it's similar. So the Henry VIII broke from the Catholic Church, but then he made himself the head of the Anglican Church, and he canceled anybody that disagreed with him. Catholics, Puritans, Presbyterians, and the Baptists, whom we call separatists or pilgrims. And so the attitude was, yes, you can read the Bible in your own language, but you still can't believe whatever you want. You have to believe what the government tells you to believe. And so they wrote all the possible prayers down and put them in a book called the Book of Common Prayer. So you don't even make up your own prayers, because you could make up one that's wrong. And so if you're having a small group meeting, the government will kick in the door and drag you away to the Star Chamber. It was like a hidden government hearing room, and they had stars on the ceiling, but they'd twist your arm and cut off an ear or cut a nose in half or brand you on the face as a heretic. And so that's what the setting was. You had the one Baptist founder, John Merton. He dies in the Newgate prison. He had written, "No man ought to be persecuted for his religion." And that obviously is the setting for Roger Williams, the Baptist that founded Rhode Island. And he said, "Enforced uniformity is the greatest occasion of civil war, ravishing a conscience, persecution of Christ Jesus in his servants." Even William Penn was put in the Tower of London for 8 months, and he wrote, "Force makes hypocrites, 'tis persuasion only that makes converts." You know, I was speaking with an Anglican priest named Calvin Robinson, and he's been on YouTube and debated at Oxford, but he's moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And he says, "I can't go back to England." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Censorship laws. 16,000 people are in prison in England today, some for as little as liking a tweet or forwarding a post." Forbes magazine has an article. People are being thrown in UK prisons over what they've said online. Another New York Post article, UK free speech crackdown sees up to 30 people a day arrested for petty offenses such as retweets. And so, matter of fact, I was in South Korea with Charlie Kirk just 4 days before he was shot, and we met with a pastor's son, S-O-N, and he's in prison right now because he organized 1 million Koreans against the trans agenda over there. So this is sort of the norm. of totalitarian governments, is they want to limit the speech of people that they disagree with. That's one thing. It's just sort of to highlight that the Pilgrims went through these struggles.
They were the
I see. No, I did not realize that.
I knew parts of that, and it's amazing how much they were the original free speech, free speech objectors,
Right.
the people who put their lives on the line to escape that totalitarianism.
Yeah, and then I read through the charter of every colony. Every colony was started by a different denomination. Virginia was Anglican, Massachusetts was Puritan, Rhode Island was Baptist, New York was Dutch Reformed, Delaware and New Jersey were originally Swedish Lutheran, and of course Pennsylvania Quaker. But they fled from Europe because in Europe it was one denomination per kingdom. And if you didn't believe the way your king did, you're persecuted and you fled.
So the states and the colonies, did they suppress? So if you're a Swedish Lutheran and there's a Catholic in that state, did they persecute that Catholic in the state? Did they walk the walk?
Most of the time they did. So in Massachusetts, they drove out the Quakers. In Virginia, they drove out Puritans, and Quakers were sort of driven out everywhere. In New York, it was Dutch Reformed, and they chased out Lutherans, and they didn't get along until the Revolution started. And then they had to work together against the King of England. Matter of fact, the First Continental Congress, a motion was made to open with prayer. And John Adams writes about it, and he says that Mr. Rutledge of South Carolina objected to a prayer because he didn't want to hear a prayer from a different denomination. We were so divided in our religious sentiments. And then Sam Adams stands up and he goes, I'm no bigot. I can hear a prayer of any man of piety who at the same time is a patriot of the nation. So they all worked together against the king. After the Revolution, their attitude changed to, we may not always agree on religion, but you are willing to fight and die for my freedom. I need to let you practice your faith. So they began to tolerate each other, first Protestants and then Catholics, then Jews, and then finally went out to the atheists and the secularists and the Islamists and the Satanists. And the last ones in want to kick the first ones out. So everybody's tolerated in America except the Christians that founded the country. It's sort of
So if all these colonies were founded with this great diversity of religion, how did that happen given that each of them had to be founded with a charter from the king?
Right. So each colony, so Virginia was an Anglican colony. Massachusetts was a Puritan colony. Originally, the Pilgrims were going to go to Virginia. They get blown off course to Massachusetts. And then you have Rhode Island. Rhode Island was founded when King Charles I had his head chopped off, and so you had the Puritans running England, and so they gave Rhode Island and Connecticut charters. New York was Dutch Reformed in 1624, and then Delaware and New Jersey were originally Swedish Lutheran, and then taken over by the Dutch, and then taken over by the English, and Connecticut and New Hampshire were Congregationalists, and then Pennsylvania was the Great Experiment. The Philadelphia means city of brotherly love, and so William Penn let any Christian group come into Pennsylvania to see if they could live together in the same geographic area. So Pennsylvania was this experiment of saying,
wow.
you mean you could actually have Catholics and Protestants and Lutherans and everybody in the same geographic area? What a novel idea.
Right.
I had no idea that was sort of the first religious melting pot of this continent.
Yeah, and so that's why they all felt comfortable going to the Continental Congress, where? In Philadelphia. John Adams writes that's the first time he visited other churches, because his country, which is what he called his state of Massachusetts, it was Congregational Puritan.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So he visits a Quaker meeting house, he visits a Catholic church, he visits, these other different denominations, and it's quite interesting to see his record of it. But they all felt comfortable coming to Philadelphia.
So we're with Bill Federer. You can find him on X at Bill Federer. It's spelled Federer. Bill, so you have these various Christian denominations, and some of them seem very intolerant of others. I imagine they're all believers in Christ, so what was the difference that caused them to think one side is not accurate and the other one is? What was the big divide?
Yeah, well, the first was obviously Martin Luther,
right.
And he started the Reformation in 1517. originally over the way that money was raised to build the Vatican, the indulgences being sold. And then you have Henry VIII. He broke away not for a religious reason. He just wanted another wife. He was married to the daughter of the King of Spain. After 18 years, she didn't have a son. He decides to divorce her, and the Pope won't recognize the divorce. So Henry decides to break away and make himself his own Pope. He unfortunately went on to have 6 wives, and their fates were divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Henry VIII was not a really nice guy to be married to. Scotland broke away from the Catholic Church, and they set up the Presbyterian Church. And presbyter means elder, so each church would elect their elders, and the elders would all meet together in the city and make a covenant. And so they pushed back against the Anglican government of the king. Puritans were inside of the Anglican Church trying to purify it from within. And the king didn't think he needed any purifying, so he persecuted them. And then the Pilgrim separatists or Baptists, they said, we're just going to withdraw ourselves and meet in secret. And then their little meetings would get raided, and that's when they decided to flee to the Netherlands and then eventually flee to America. And then the Quakers were sort of Baptists with no pastor. They were a society of friends, just a bunch of guys meeting. And each one has its sort of benefits and drawbacks, but the Quakers were the first ones to let everybody participate, women, blacks, didn't matter what race. So it's sort of a sliding scale. If you want it more stable, you slide to the more hierarchical clergy laity model. And if you want more congregation involvement, you slide to the other side of the scale. A big invention was the printing press. And so that, instead of the Bible being in Latin and the minister reading it in Latin and then interpreting it for you, once the printing press came about, everybody could have their own copy, and then the pastor began to coach everybody to read through the Bible themselves. And so that's when you see more congregational participation. And that's what the Pilgrims were. And when they get blown off course, instead of landing in Virginia, they're on the coast of Massachusetts, and there's no government. And the captain's telling them to get off the boat. And they go, what are we going to do? They said, let's take our covenant church form of government and make it our civil government.
Oh my
and so
goodness.
that's what the Mayflower is. It says, we in the presence of God covenant ourselves together into a civil body politic. They literally took their little congregational church model and made it their civil government model. And that became the model for New England, where you literally had pastors and churches founding cities. So Providence, Rhode Island was founded by the first Baptist church in America. Hartford, Connecticut was founded by the first congregational church in America. So everybody's involved in church and everybody's involved in city government because it's the church founding the city.
So we have a minute left here in this segment. So really, America really was a pioneer in religious diversity and thought.
Definitely, yeah. And
why do some people want to dismiss that?
Well, it doesn't fit the narrative. And so there's a socialist tactic called deconstruction, where you say negative things about a country's founders so that the students emotionally detach from them. And then you get them into a neutral where they don't remember where they came from. And then you can brainwash them into whatever future you have planned for them, whether it's socialism or Islamism or transgenderism or whatever. But it's a sales technique. So if I was a toothpaste salesman, the first thing I do is intentionally tell you negative things about the toothpaste you're currently brushing with. You're still brushing with that stuff? Haven't you read the article? It'll eat the enamel off your teeth. You're like, ooh, you're repulsed by it. Now I have you in a neutral. You're open-minded. What are all the toothpastes out there? And then I can give you my pitch for this brand new tartar control breath freshener toothpaste. And so it's sort of a drive neutral reverse process.
That is a terrifying process, but we're going to be coming back with things that are not terrifying. Some Thanksgiving reminiscences coming up. Stay tuned.
All right, imagine this. You're running for president. Yes, president. What's the first thing you need? Well, besides the $1 million fundraising, you need to secure your web domain. You need your name, .vote. Easy to remember, straight to the point, and a direct link to your campaign. No, but seriously, whether you're getting out to vote or convincing people that yes, you can fix the potholes on Main Street, a .vote domain helps you stand out. It's not just a website, it's a call to action. Head over to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name, .vote, and boom, you're ready to make a lasting impact. Get started today with your .vote web address.
welcome back to the Breaking Battlegrounds Thanksgiving special with Bill Federer. You probably know him, folks, from his American Minute radio feature. It's heard across the country. It's amazing stuff. He does unbelievable deep dives into the history of Thanksgiving and the religious origins of this country that I think every single person should check out. So go follow him on X at BillFederer.com. And Bill, thank you once again for joining us. When we were in the break, we always ask our guests if there's something we wanted to hit on. One fact I did not know until I saw watching your stuff is the Pilgrims were not trying to come to this part of the world at all originally, or at least considered not coming to this part of the world at all.
Right, yeah. They thought of going to Guyana in South America. William Bradford writes, some had thoughts about Guyana. Those for Guyana alleged that the country was rich and fruitful and blessed with a perpetual spring. And then he goes on to say, but to this it was answered that it was out of the question. For if they should go there and live, the jealous Spaniard would never suffer them long, but would displant them and overthrow them as they did the French in Florida. What's the French in Florida? 1565, 300 French Protestants called Huguenots settled what today is Jacksonville, Florida, but the Spanish found out about it and butchered the men and took the women and children away. And so the Pilgrim says, we don't want to go anywhere near Spain's territory called the Spanish Main. But that's sort of an interesting little trivia. They did take a 3,000-mile journey, 66 days. They were confined to the 5-foot-high 'tween deck on the Mayflower, tossing and turning. But they were going to go to Jamestown in Virginia. It's a good thing they didn't. Why? Right. 4,000 people died in Jamestown between 1607 and 1624. One time they had a starving time. They start the winter off with 500 people. In the spring, there's 50. And then in 1622, they had an Indian massacre that wiped out a quarter of the Jamestown settlement. So had the Pilgrims gone to Jamestown, they may not have survived. But one of the other interesting things is the Pilgrims tried communism. You say, what? Yeah, they had no money, so they had to borrow money from investors in England. And the investors started a company, the London Company, and it had bylaws. And the bylaws said this: all profits and benefits that are got by trade, traffic, trucking, working, fishing, or any other means shall remain still in ye common stock, and all livelihood, and all their meat, drink, and apparel, and all provision out of ye common stock. So you work hard, goes into this pot, and everything comes out of the pot. They tried it and almost starved to death. William Bradford says the failure of that experiment of communal service, which was tried for several years by good and honest men, proves the emptiness of the theory of Plato, that the taking away of private property and possession of it in community would make a state happy, as if they were wiser than God. For in this instance, community of property was found to breed much confusion. The young man, who was most able and fit for service, objected to having to spend their time working for other men's wives and children without any recompense. The strong man had no more share of food, clothes, etc., than the weak man, who was not able to do a quarter of what the other could. This was thought injustice. The aged engraver men considered it a dishonor to be ranked in labor with the younger ones. And as for men's wives, who were obliged to do service for other men, such as cooking, washing their clothes, etc., they considered it a kind of slavery. And he goes on, let none argue that this is due to human failing rather than to this communistic plan of life in itself. That's his words. And then he goes on that God, in his wisdom, saw that another plan of life was fitter for them. So they tried to obtain a better crop, and after much discussion, it was decided that each man would plant corn for his own household. Wow, what a novel idea. You plant corn for your household. So every family was assigned a parcel of land. This was very successful. It made all hands more industrious, so that much more corn was planted. The women now went willingly into the field to plant corn and took their little ones with them, while before they would allege weakness, and to have compelled them would have been thought great oppression. So it's like, my husband died, the kids are sick, I can't go out and plant. No, it's your land. Whatever grows is yours. She's like, okay, kid, come on, we're going to plant today.
Now, Bill, you touched on the planting of corn. That was a development that probably saved the colony, right? Agriculture in the New World, adapting to it, that's something they struggled with the first year. How did they adapt?
Yeah, well, that's the story of Squanto. So half of them died the first winter. And then in the spring, William Bradford writes that an Indian came boldly amongst them and spoke to them and broke spoken English, told them of another Indian named Squanto who had been in England. And it's like, what? And so he explains that the Pilgrims were religious, but a lot of other ones weren't, and they would lure natives onto the boat, lock them below deck, and then take them over to Europe. And that's what happened to Squanto. He was taken back to England, and he was taught English so he could show them where the good fishing spots were. They still were looking for a Northwest Passage, a river that would go through America over to China. Obviously, he didn't find one. But then Squanto gets dropped back off in America in 1614, and then another English ship by a bad guy named Thomas Hunt comes along and wants to barter and trade, here's some beaver skins and stuff. And they lure Squanto and other Indians on the boat. And then they say, hey, you want to see what it looks like downstairs? And then they close the lid and they take them to Malaga, Spain. And some Catholic friars found out about it and raised a ruckus and took the natives away and then gave them their freedom. And here's Squanto hitchhiking his way back to England. And he gets hired by the Newfoundland Company, and then he gets dropped off on the shores of America in June of 1620, just a few months before November of 1620 when the Pilgrims land. Unfortunately, he gets off the boat to find his entire tribe is dead. A plague. William Bradford said a French ship was shipwrecked at Cape Cod 3 years earlier. The sailors got ashore. The Indians never left watching them and dogging them till they got the advantage and killed them all but 3 or 4 whom they made sport with. Anyway, one of them must have had an illness. The tribe had no resistance, and it wiped out the entire tribe. Now, ironically, had Squanto not been kidnapped, he most likely would have been killed too. Anyway, here's Squanto living with the neighboring Wampanoag tribe. And Samoset goes into his teepee and says, hey, Squant, you wouldn't believe it. There's a bunch of English people trying to start a settlement on your old stomping ground. And so Squanto comes out of the woods, and you could just imagine the conversation. Oh, yeah, you guys from England? Yeah, I used to live there. St. Paul's Chapel and the pub down on Wharf Street. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And then he goes, this place, I grew up here. I knew this like the back of a hand. And so William Bradford says that Squanto guided them to unknown places, never left them till he died, that he showed them how to plant corn. And it's like, well, they tried. He goes, no, the soil's worn out. You got to get a fish and put it over the seed of a kernel of corn, and then after the fish will decompose and you'll have fertile soil. And then showed them how to take corn and put it in a pot and shake it over a fire and make popcorn, right? And then take off their shoes, go down to the riverbank and squeegee in the mud and catch eels and clams. And then they tried fishing. He said, no, these are salmon. They spawn in April. This river is going to be packed. And William Bradford says, nor was there a man among them who had ever seen a beaver skin until instructed by Squanto. And it took 40 years worth of beaver skins to pay off that debt to the adventurers, the people that lent them the money. So they had an abundant harvest thanks to Squanto. The first Thanksgiving, 90 Indians showed up, and there's only 52 pilgrims. Nearly twice as many. And get this, only 4 women. Right? I mean, all the other ones had died. 4 women, and then 24 men and 24 children and teenagers. So there were some younger girls there.
Wow. The first multicultural, first Thanksgiving was a multicultural Thanksgiving, and that is a good tradition to continue to follow. Bill Federer, we'd love to have you back on the program soon. This is Breaking Battlegrounds. We're coming right back.
Old Glory Depot isn't just a website. It's a movement. Featuring unapologetically conservative shirts and gear, we're proud to deliver 100% American-made products. From premium materials to bold designs, every purchase supports American jobs and celebrates our country. Show your pride, support your values, and shop oldglorydepot.com because patriotism never goes out of style.
Welcome back to the Thanksgiving special edition of Breaking Battlegrounds. We are rolling right now into a special edition of Kiley's Corner.
Yeah, it's a little bit happier today.
It's a happy Kiley's Corner.
Yeah.
Talking about crimes and the ones committed, murder and mayhem in a world of sin and Kiley's on a roll. Kiley's got a corner and she's gonna start spilling out all the true crime in the world we're living in. So come and take a spin and listen in.
I feel like our radio guests haven't heard my theme song in a little while.
No, they haven't.
Tuning into the podcast. But
Well, if they're not tuning into the podcast, listen, folks. BreakingBattlegrounds.vote. Just go there now.
Yeah, usually it's murder and mayhem, like it says. But today, I'm thankful.
It is a Thanksgiving special.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about, going off our last guest, Bill, the history of Thanksgiving and the history of the Thanksgiving Macy's Day Parade, which used to be the Christmas Macy's Day Parade. But I saw this fun post, and it was about in 1928 to 1932. Instead of now, they just deflate the balloons, roll them up, and then use them again for the years.
Right.
For the next years. Well, back in the day, they used to release the balloons into the sky, and then people in New York would go chasing after the balloons, because if they caught the balloons, they would get a $50 to $100 gift card.
What years was this?
This was in 1928 to 1932.
That's real money.
Yeah.
That's real
So it was
money then.
during the Depression, right?
Right.
So each balloon was actually tagged. And then if they brought them back. So in 1928, the Sky Tiger, that's what they called him, landed on a roof in Richmond Hills, Queens. And there was actually a tug of war between the homeowner's son and a passing by someone who just saw passing by person, I guess. And the homeowner's son won that one, turned it in, got his money. A few years later in Queens, it landed on the shoreline, and there was a scramble between a bunch of people, and the balloon was actually torn to pieces. And they went to turn it in, and Macy's was like, no, they have to come back in one piece. And so there was another instance where a guy found it in his Greenville, Connecticut farmland, 160 miles from New York, because they had a valve, so they would float up, so they wouldn't go too far. But they'd had a valve, so a few days later, they would kind of start losing the helium, so it would fall. There was another one where it landed in the East River, and a ferry boat captain, he actually fished it out. He won the money there. But one of the most famous ones is the Blue Hippo, and he's still considered lost at sea. So there's a Blue Hippo helium balloon somewhere lost at sea in the Atlantic Ocean that has never been seen since.
It's a good children's book.
Yeah, but ding, ding,
There's
ding.
our next idea.
There's our next idea.
Next number 6.
Yeah, but the number 6. But this whole tradition ended because back in 1932, there was pilots would fly around and take actually passengers from New York City to watch the Macy's Day Parade from the planes. And there was a new 22-year-old pilot. Her name was Annette Gibson. She thought she could bump into the balloon with her plane and knock it down. No. It got stuck on the wing of the plane. They lost control, plunged 5,000 feet. Yep. The door flew open. Okay, again, this is back in the New York Times that the story is being told. So I think it's true, but plunged 5,000 feet. She fell out the door, but was caught on by her seatbelt on her ankle, and her training captain actually pulled her back into the plane and was able to land the plane safely. And Annette was still mad that she did not get the money from the balloon.
What year was this?
This is in 1932.
What? We need to follow up what rest of Annette's life was like. I need to know more about Annette now. Now I'm done with the TDS. I need to know what happened with Annette.
But I think she got the idea because the year prior, 1931, Clarence Chamberlain, he was actually known as one of the greatest aviators because he flew across the Atlantic Ocean without any backup or relief. He was the second person to do that. Well, he would take the New Yorkers up in the plane, and one of the passengers convinced him to go after 2 of the balloons. And the wording in the New York Times was he lassoed Jerry the pig and was able to capture
the
pig. Yeah. And so the next day it was Chamberlain in plane gives foolish feline a lift. That was in the New York Times.
Now look, I feel today for this Thanksgiving show, we have really informed our audience. Our first guest was just wonderful about the history and the religious denominations. Kiley has added a whole new aspect. Now
you're not going to watch the
Macy
parade
Day's
the
parade.
same. Yeah.
And I hate parades, but now I'm going to watch it.
Did you know the parade was originally done with animals from the zoo?
Yes, I did know that.
And then it went to just balloons on sticks before they went to the giant balloons. Honestly,
2000. And by the way, I think 2007, didn't they have a Barney balloon that popped or something?
Yeah,
there was one windy year where it mayhem.
That was traumatizing to the kids because the police officers had to go and stab Barney to get him under control. So they said that was traumatizing. But
I personally, I would never be traumatized by the death of Barney. That thing was awful. But,
You didn't have kids, so I don't want to hear you moaning and groaning about it.
oh, God, I can't imagine. I'm so sorry, Chuck. All right, Breaking Battlegrounds coming back with more in just a moment.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chains disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or Name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest up today, Shawn VanDiver, is a Navy veteran and president of AfghanEvac. Shawn, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on today, guys. Really excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about AfghanEvac and what you've been trying to do there really for the last few years.
And why we've abandoned our Afghan allies there.
Look, thank you so much. It's been about 4.5 years since the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. You'll recall the pictures of Afghans hanging off of planes. While all that was happening, thousands of veterans across the country, thousands of frontline civilians across the country were receiving phone calls from their friends in Afghanistan, folks that they either served with or got to know later. I didn't serve in Afghanistan. I got to know my buddy Lucky later on while he was here, but he went back. And he called me and he said, "Brother, I'm stuck on this mountain in Rangoon, 8 hours outside of Kabul. We're surrounded by the Taliban. We're running out of ammunition. I think I'm going to die. Will you grant my last wish and help get my family back to San Diego?" I thought Lucky was a goner. I sprang into action. I was in like 40 some odd chats at like a day and a half after, or a day after he texted me, and I was like, whoa. We need to get everybody talking. We need to get everybody in the same room. So that's how AfghanEvac was formed. We brought people together. It was like 7 groups. The first meeting, and then we ended up having, now it's 250 or 300 have been a member of us at one time or another. It's not as active as it used to be, right? Lucky made it. Lucky stole a jingle truck, talked his way through 10 Taliban checkpoints, made it to Eagle Base. We put him on a black helicopter and got him to HKIA. He's now a small business owner in Texas where he owns 2 Afghan restaurants and an Afghan halal market.
Oh, wow.
In between Texas and Oklahoma.
He truly is lucky.
He truly is
fortunate.
Lucky. Yes. And look, after August 30th, we kept going. We made a partnership with the State Department and the White House and everybody. We forced them to build the safest, most secure legal immigration pathway in our country's history. It's called Enduring Welcome. And unfortunately, I think because President Biden built it, it got shut down on day one of the administration. They shut down all refugee admissions. They shut down, and part of our wartime allies, you've got the SIV program and the refugee pathway, right? The SIV program is very narrow. That's for people who worked directly for and were paid by the U.S. government. And then the refugee pathway is for for lawyers and prosecutors to put away the Taliban, women who served in the Afghan special forces and are now in great danger, parliamentarians that believed in the idea of democracy, women who stood up and fought for us, and the family of active duty U.S. military. So we've got thousands of family members of active duty military still stuck there. And then they shut down foreign aid, which meant we thought it was like accidental. but once it was shut down, it never got turned back on except for relocation or resettlement support for SIVs only. So we had 5,000 Afghans a month coming out of Afghanistan on State Department run flights that were safe, secure, fast, and now there are none. And we think that we know the president cares about this. We think that Stephen Miller is in the way, and we need the president to know that Stephen Miller is squandering his relationship with veterans.
We need to get the word out there, because we've had guests, Chuck, on this program before who have talked about their relationship with many of the people in Afghanistan who served alongside our troops, who worked to help establish a secure government for everybody there, the horrors they're going through. It's incredibly disappointing to hear that the Trump administration so far has not.
Well, we've talked about
care of
this.
them in the way
We've talked about this issue over 4 years, a half a dozen times. We've had guests on, and I have not heard one veteran say, "No, we shouldn't be doing this."
Right.
I mean, never. I've never heard it.
No.
You went back to Washington recently to speak directly to people like Senator Coons and Marsha Blackburn and so forth. Which U.S. senator do you feel, or couple, is a big proponent and advocate of getting these allies of ours, these people who spilt blood alongside our soldiers, to get them here? Who do you feel is a champion of it?
So this is the most bipartisan issue I've ever seen, except for just now the vote on the Epstein files, right?
Right.
Like, I've seen so many senators and representatives support this. Certainly, Senator Coons has been a strident champion. Senator Klobuchar, Senator Mullen, Senator Tillis, Senator Graham shook my hand and said, "Brother, we got to get these people out." Senators, like all of them, right? There are very few who do not support this. Senator Sheehy ran because of the withdrawal. We know that this has broad support. And then in the House, we've got everybody from the far left to the far right. One day I had a meeting with Matt Gaetz and Ilhan Omar in the same day. And both of them were supportive of this.
I bet that was a day.
It wasn't the same meeting.
What can people out there, because obviously we're doing this for our Thanksgiving show, one of the things we always try to do is give people an avenue where they can help get involved and bring some closure to these families, to be able to reunite with their folks, to be able to get them out of this dangerous situation. How can folks get involved and help out your efforts?
Sure. The number one thing we need is funding to keep going. You can go to AfghanEvac.org/donate. You can also just go to AfghanEvac.org. Look around. We've got sliders. We've got all sorts of infographics that are really helpful. If you want to write your member of Congress, you can go on there. There's a line on the top and a pop-up that comes in. If you go to AfghanEvac.org/elected-officials, you can see the various things that we've asked people to write Congress about.
And that's important on this program, Chuck, because we know we have a lot of folks who listen to this who are very well connected. It's kind of an unusual show that way. We have a lot of folks out there who call us and say, "Hey, my friend is Senator so-and-so." Well, folks, it's time to call your friend the senator.
That's right. Call them and say that we need a few things. Number one, we have to restart Enduring Welcome. Number two, we have to make sure that USCIS doesn't apply the travel ban to people who are here awaiting their green cards, because that will prevent a bunch of Afghans who made it here during our withdrawal. They'll get kicked out and they're dead. And number three, we absolutely have to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act with some modifications.
What is the Afghan Adjustment Act? I'm not familiar.
Sure. The Enduring Welcome Act is more important right now because that will restart the relocation.
Yeah.
But the Afghan Adjustment Act would add categories of folks who served in the Afghan military, other types of people who served directly into the P1, P2 program. Now, refugees are stopped right now. So if I were on the phone with the senator, I would say, get the refugee program restarted for Afghans, because if nothing else, there are 3,000 family members of active duty U.S. military who are trapped right now.
So there's 3,000 people in Afghanistan who are related or dependents upon U.S. military. Are these like they had relationships, had kids, they got married? What is this exactly?
No, these are like, my name is Abdul. I'm an Afghan. I served alongside the U.S. military. I became an SIV, came over here in 2011, 2012, 2016. I naturalized. I serve in the military, My mom, my dad, my brothers, my sisters, my children, my wife are still there. And why wouldn't they still be there, right? Like,
Right.
They were still living there, and then everything fell, and these people didn't have a pathway out. And this is actually like a fucking scandal. We had to convince, do you have to beep that out?
Yeah.
But we got it.
This is a scandal. Look, in February 2022, we got the Biden administration. We had to build quad charts. We got the Biden administration to approve this exemption to policy because, of course, if you're the family of active duty U.S. military, you're in great danger of the Taliban hunting.
Yeah.
They took 19 months to build policy around it. It was infuriating. And then they expected us to tell the military, and we're like, dude, you can get a message out to the military. And then they finally got it out in like January or February of 2025, January or February 2024, but like they took too long to move these folks. So now we have thousands. There are 200 of these family members stuck on a State Department run facility in Doha, Qatar. It's insane.
How long have they been there?
They've been there since at least January. Some of them have been there a little bit longer. I've been there a couple times. This is a temporary facility. And we think that, the immigration is the big issue for the administration. And we think that some people got a little bit overzealous.
Yes.
And look, Afghans, 90% of the American public supports this population. It's good politics for them to get these folks here. It's good policy to get them here. It's good for our national security, and it's good for our veterans. We're about to go through our first Christmas where Afghans aren't coming here right now. Families aren't coming here right now. And look, Biden did a lot wrong, but he got this thing right at the end. Enduring welcome was extraordinary.
Well, we had a reporter, Lynn from London, who had served in Afghanistan for a decade as a war correspondent. And we brought her out here. We have, 50 families that were helicopter pilots out here who cannot get a license to fly.
You're in Phoenix, right?
Yeah. They're just stuck.
Skilled, trained helicopter pilots.
I may ask a real important question for our listeners who are skittish about bringing folks from the Middle East in because of the terrorism aspect.
Sure.
When we bring these folks in, what is the background check we do to assure that they're loyal to America and they're not here with nefarious intentions? I think that's real important. That has to be explained over and over and over for people because we're still skittish from 9/11 and everything else.
Sure. Visit your readers or your listeners can go to AfghanEvac.org/vetting, and you can see all of the vetting that happens for Enduring Welcome. Again, safest, most secure legal immigration pathway in history. There's pre-travel vetting that was happening before they left Afghanistan. 4 different types of things, right? Like the State Department PRM would do a comprehensive review and eligibility check. And then USCIS would review cases for fraud indicators, inconsistent information, levels of sufficient vetting data. Then they would be biometrically vetted. They would do all their biometrics before they even got on a plane to leave Afghanistan. And then they'd be checked by Centers for Disease Control, like tons and tons of vetting. Every way that they can be vetted, they are. And then they go to another government facility, and DHS checks them out. More biometrics, more USCIS, more all the intelligence agencies. There's a really good long version. There's a short version and a long version of our vetting graphic because we know that people are jumpy. Right? But I'll tell you, there's not been a single incident of somebody who's come here through Enduring Welcome creating any problems. Not to say, and even if there was, even if someday there will be, right? Just because of the sheer numbers.
Right.
Even if there was, I served in the Navy for a long time. You couldn't put 200,000 people in the Navy in a room and expect that none of them have committed crimes.
Right. Well, we're fighting. We're fighting this with ICE agents now.
They don't even ask that during Marine recruiting. Come on.
That's right. Yeah, Marines are like, "Are you willing to commit a crime?"
Right. All for a good cause, though. All for a good cause, though. If you're a Marine.
Yep.
So, as this goes forward, is there a movement right now to secure either an ongoing presidential program, executive program, or to pass legislation codifying this permanently?
Yes, if the Enduring Welcome Act passes, then we're in really good shape, and it's getting close. It might pass in the National Defense Authorization Act. That's legislation that we sort of pushed for. I just met with Representative Brian Mast, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee this week. He tells me he has high hopes around it. But look, I got to just be really honest with you. Congress is going to be the only way we do this because nobody, not even in Congress, nobody is willing to go to the president and say that Stephen Miller messed up here. Nobody's willing to do it.
No, I believe it. I believe
it. I mean, people are scared of him. Mike Waltz is one of the biggest champions of these folks, and he wouldn't touch it with the president.
Look, I think we all understand that there were a lot of abuses of the refugee program under Biden, allowing people to be brought in as refugees who were not refugees, right? But there is a very different case to be made for people like this who have served alongside our troops and whose continued presence in their country is a death sentence.
We do not leave our friends behind.
No.
That's the American
exactly
motto.
Right.
That's the American motto. Well, my friend, thank you. We hope you have a great Thanksgiving. We hope you'll join us soon. If you have anything you're writing, send it to us. We'll put it on our social media network. We thank you so very much and keep up your good work. We hope that we can help you in some way.
Thanks so much, gentlemen. We'll see you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Folks, thank you for tuning in once again to Breaking Battlegrounds. We always love having you here. We're going to be back on the air next week, but if you're not already, make sure you're going to breakingbattlegrounds.vote. Get signed up for that podcast portion. We got some great stuff coming up there. Talk to you soon.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense. So don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Ho, ho, ho. What do you get when you mix cocoa, candy canes, and strong Wi-Fi signals? You get a podcast. That's right, Santa has a podcast. I'm telling stories from the North Pole, sharing elf updates, and answering your questions. And yes, spilling some holiday secrets. It's festive, it's fun, and fueled entirely by cookies. Tune in wherever you get your podcast. It's Santa Has a Podcast. Just press play.